Do you hear me? Yeah. So thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts and our experience in building the ecosystem for the culture and creative industries in Israel. I work in this domain of design strategy, leadership, and creative economic and creative industries for the last 15 years, if not even more. And this unique time for me, it's the first time post-pandemic that I'm in a live event like that. In light of the war in Ukraine, but also in light of going out a little bit, transitioning out from Corona, give us a special context to speak about the role of CCIs into building back a better economy and society. In periods of growth, we used to develop the same models, to copy the same success models, but a crisis and a breakdown give us the opportunity to rethink about the way we want to move forward and the role of CCIs in this context. Definitely. So when we speak about the future, we can start with the questions of who are the ones who invent the future. Some would say that technology has a major role in that, but we can see along the years the role of science fiction movies, books, literature, from Star Trek to Back to the Future, Jules Verne, really providing vision and direction for new technologies to form. The power of their imagination really build our many of the scenarios and technologies that we consume and live every day, from flat screens, TVs, and so on. AI, different technology were just envisioned in science fiction before they were even materialized. An interesting survey tried to look at which are the professions that can vision the future of the planet, humanity, culture, technology, and the economy. They look in different professions, from prophecy, political, the arts, science, and business. We could expect that the results of this survey will be something like that each one knows to present, to predict the future and its own domain of expertise. But in fact, the results are much more complex. They look like this. The arts predict the future of technology, science the future of culture, business the future of planet and humanity. We can see that the political sector doesn't predict the future in any of this domain. And what does it mean for us? That thinking just within the box of our expertise, really limiting the potential of crossover innovation. And that companies that today and the future wants to innovate within the digital and technological advancements must be also design and creative companies. An interesting project is a result of a collaboration between NASA and an Israeli artist, Eyal Gever. NASA had this technology of 3D printing in space, and they came to the artist and asked to work on them to create the first piece of art in space. And this artwork called Laugh in Space, the artist chose to 3D print human laughter as a great symbol of what kind of values and the symbol of humanity we want to live in space or to mark in space and for the future generations. Me personally, I started my professional journey, in fact, as a software engineer, trained software engineer and working in the high-tech industry. And I remember a striking moment that we sit together in a board meeting together with the design department of the company, and I understood the dominant voice that the designers and the creative had in defining the future roadmap of the company and its product. And it was this single moment that I decided to go to study design. Then I studied business design in Italy, promising myself that I will go back to the industry, entering with new capacities and from new door. And what was my personal insight then became a global trend in companies. Nowadays, companies understand more and more the role of design and creativity and its importance to their business success, and they give designers and not only people coming from technology the front seat in different interesting role. VP design in companies like 3M. Philips was the protagonist of that change, but we see really in different industries the dominant role of design and understanding the creative capacities to take companies and economies forward. And it's not only in big corporates. We see a trend of more and more new startups and new companies founded or co-founded by designers and people from the creative industries. The main and maybe the most known one is Airbnb. Both founders are coming from industrial design background. They don't just develop or set up a beautiful product, but they really redesign the whole hospitality industry. So they come with this disruptive thinking to rethink about potential use of existing resources and transform it into a successful business. And this is their disruptive power of creativity. So innovation comes not just from disruptive technology, but really from the disruptive thinking of creatives. And the meaning of culture is changing. If in the 15th century it used to be, culture used to be to nurture our souls, today we talk on culture in the context of how business and companies organize themselves and behave. And with this background, almost a decade ago, when I came back from Italy to Israel, I came to Shankar. It's a college powerhouse of design, engineering, and art to set up their innovation center, and with a personal mission to really build the ecosystem for the creative economy in Israel, an economy that back then was very much dominant by technological innovation. My mission was to build up the new ecosystem, bringing together policymakers, higher education, of course, but also companies and working with the government. We worked along the years with EU-funded project that really contributed to our way moving forward through great partnership as this project with the main creative economy centers around Europe, knowledge exchange, and see how creatives can really lead the Israeli and the global economy and society, moving from talking about entrepreneurship, that really developing their leadership capacities. We started really from the basic to define the first building blocks in the economy, to understand what is the definition that was back then very much known in Europe, but less recognized in our ecosystem. Our first mandate was working with students, 10 higher educations, different higher education in Israel, working with students coming from design and different creative industries and engineering, to build and train them for new skills and making them empower them to take this new role, and helping them to build startups that can really help recover different sectors. An example we like to show is this example of a graduate from the fashion department in Shankar. She understood that she worked in the second most polluting industry in the world, and instead of designing new collection and be part of the problem, she wanted to be part of the solution, and she developed a textile that is based on seaweed and really developed this industry to be much more greener. So really taking their responsibility and help whole industry to recover with the creative capacities. We move forward from just training to develop new data. We started to conduct and to bring new data to the ecosystem about the role of creatives within the economy and startup ecosystem in Israel. We used to think that founders comes from business administration and technology, but in fact, when we look inside, we see more and more founders of companies coming from the background of cinema, design, music, and really any creative sector, with a 66% rise in foreign investment in creative industries in recent years in creative startups. We see more data, export rise in 16% back data from 2015, sector that employed more women. I think this is also correlate to international and European surveys, and we also find out that companies that work with designers rather than outsourcing or in-house designer, they register more patent, which was really interesting for us to find out. A new survey that is going to publish next week, so this is the first glimpse into this data, is we conducted the first survey in Israel together with Shankar and an organization called Startup Nation Central to measure the value of design in technological companies in Israel. We see a great transformation in our economy that used to be the startup nation. In recent years, more and more companies are growing to be scale-ups, to be unicorns, and to really establishing themselves as big and global leading companies. And we wanted to understand the role of design in this transformation. It is a survey that was based both on qualitative and quantitative data, approaching designers, management of companies, VCs, investors. Formal publication next week. We can see one of our interesting interviewers, Shai Vininger, he's co-founder of two unicorns, Fiverr and Lemonade. He comes from a design background, and he really attribute most of his business success for his design studies, acknowledging creative thinking that teaches him to look and to find solution for problems really from different perspective, and recommending any startup, the first employees to take side by side to them, to have a designers in order to build companies that bring new thinking and new solutions to any sector that they deal with. So this is a very great and strong testimonials. We also see in the survey, very interesting, that designers and creatives, many times they don't take the expected UX, UI or design roles, but they are founders, they are sitting the top management of the companies, they work in R&D, in positions of growth, customer success, product and project management. So they really take on themselves different and more strategic responsibilities, both in B2B and B2C companies. So more data to come. So this data really helped us to work with policymakers, with the government, to bring proven data, and drive wide policy change. When talking with the government, their point of view, they were interesting to see how design and creative industries can help rise productivity in different sectors of the Israeli economy, and we build this kind of narrative together with them, and at the end really led to new funding schemes or changing existing current governmental funding scheme in the programs for rising productivity that for the first time in Israel acknowledge also process innovation, business model innovation, design thinking innovation, using your experience as part of governmental funding scheme, both in the productivity plan, but also then they adopted it into the Industry 4.0 funding schemes, acknowledging that when we move forward, and someone said here before, when we talk about Industry 4.0, so we cannot speak only about smart machines and artificial intelligence, but human creativity, and make new meanings out of those technologies to the people is something that is inseparable. And side by side to that, we started to build also strategic bilateral agreements this is the first one between Israel Minister of Economy and the Ministry of Economy in Austria. Now there is an open tender in the Ministry of Economy in Israel to set up an innovation community for the cultural and creative industry. It happens just in parallel to the new KIC that is established in Europe. So really building new frameworks for creativity to flourish in new ways in the next years. We cannot speak about moving forward and about the future without speaking about the metaverse and the digital transformation and the Web3. It's really a platform where we design from scratch new virtual realities. It means for creative people to be very fluent with new technologies as AR, VR, and others that will come, building new interaction and new environments. And metaverse, the term was coined back in the early 90s, also in a science movie book, Snow Crash, but got hype recently when Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook changed the name of Facebook from Facebook to Meta, and really created a movement of many companies, from real estate to architecture to retail companies that are developing their capacities in this world. I think it's worth to think what kind of world, if we can build virtual worlds from scratch, are we going to copy the same ones that we live in reality, or what kind of opportunities there are to build utopic visions of new worlds in the metaverse. Also, a new opportunity for creators is the creators economy. Also, creativity merged with technology, music tech, fashion tech, digital fashion is really growing in the metaverse, animation, video, all these kind of new tools and platform to grow in the digital domain that creative that have. We see really huge trends into those areas, also facilitated by huge funds and investments going into those areas. And the digital platforms obviously also building the global market for creators. But when we talk about creativity, which is, by the way, by the rank of LinkedIn or other professional surveys, creativity is the dominant, if not #1 skill for the future. At the same time, it's hard for people to be creative in their offices. I don't know if they can be creative in their houses. And during the pandemic, but also when looking forward, there is a growing awareness, acknowledgement of the power of nature for healing, but also for cognitive and work and creativity. And when we talk about hybrid work, we don't look at it anymore just hybrid between home and office, but also between city and nature in order to nurture the creativity in people. This is an example of the tree office of Microsoft, 2 hours ride from their main headquarters in the US, really bringing people to work together in teamwork, to be more creative and support their well-being. Well-being, I must say, is a new discipline when we talk about creativity and the role of mindfulness in nurture creativity and new meanings. So we'll see, for example, old villages or abandoned villages around Europe rebuild themselves around remote work communities, inviting them to work from everywhere, and be more creative. So these are in parallel to the metaverse. In the natureverse, we see this kind of trends. So looking forward for the Creative Nation, these are the main domains that we are going to focus in the coming years. Imagination, foresight is maybe the most, the highest capability of creative in order to imagine new scenarios for the future. It's very, very much related for the creativity for the future of work, for the creative economy, for the Web3, and business transformation. 2 projects, flag project I will mention very quickly that we are working on at the moment. One is the Observatory of the Future. It's an innovation resort that is going to be placed in the Israeli desert to bring people creative, but not only creative, and also organization and public players for personal and professional transformation with the right balance between stimulation and stillness, full with learning and development programs, and to plan together the future in new and creative ways. Another project that we are running on a regional level, also in the desert, is renovation of the Bedouin settlements, real nomads, not digital nomads, but desert nomads that live in really low and poor conditions. You can see one of the picture here on the left. There is a myth that innovation that technology is the way for innovation moving forward. We spoke about creativity. Here we talk about really local knowledge that we study and work with the local inhabitants to explore the tradition of the community and how we can build a more human-centered solutions for their housing and living, and improving, building new model for the future of living. So we really push always the projects to be at the forefront and one step before the industry, giving inspiration for a new project, a new direction to rise, from design and strategy to design for business transformation, but really for national strategy and regional development. This is in glimpse our experience, and if there are any questions, you are welcome.